In 1926, rockets lifted off for the first time, Route 66 opened its endless road, and jazz filled the night. Let's drift gently into a year of wonder and change. Welcome, dear listener. My name is Toro, and I invite you to rest easy as we drift back in time to the year 1926. Imagine yourself stepping softly into a world both familiar and distant, one where jazz drifts across dance floors, where the skies are beginning to fill with airplanes, and where daily life is lit by the quiet glow of progress. It is a year balanced between tradition and change. Farmers still rise with the sun, horses still clip-clop in villages, yet cities sparkle with neon, automobiles, and gramophones playing the latest hits. Newspapers speak of political debates and scientific marvels, but children still laugh over marbles, string, and skipping ropes. As you settle into the sound of my voice, allow your mind to wander gently. This is not a lecture, nor a history lesson meant to stir urgency. Instead, think of it as a bedtime story told across time. Together, we will visit the events and everyday details of 1926, the discoveries, the books, the laughter, and the quiet reflections that mark this year in the world's great turning. Let us begin. World events. The year 1926 unfolded like a chapter full of steady transitions, carried more by rhythms of change than by sudden shocks. In the United Kingdom, the general strike of May filled the headlines. For 9 days, millions of workers across the country laid down their tools in solidarity with coal miners whose wages had been cut. The strike was tense but mostly peaceful, and though it ended without victory for the miners, it revealed the growing strength of organized labor. Imagine the quiet streets of London, trams standing still, presses silenced, and cafes filled with murmurs as people waited for news. Across the Atlantic in the United States, life was humming in the midst of the Roaring Twenties. Calvin Coolidge was president, embodying an era of calm conservatism, while in Chicago, the rumble of Prohibition-era speakeasies filled the nights. The nation celebrated as Route 66 was officially established, a highway that would one day become legendary, linking Chicago to Santa Monica, a ribbon of road stretching across the continent. Elsewhere in Europe, Benito Mussolini consolidated power in Italy, shaping his fascist state more firmly. In Germany, under the Weimar Republic, life carried an air of fragile optimism. Cultural life blossomed. Art, film, and literature found daring voices in Berlin's cafes. But beneath the surface, economic uncertainty remained. Farther east in Japan, Emperor Hirohito formally assumed the throne following the death of Emperor Taisho at the end of 1926, marking the beginning of the Showa era. At the same time, China was experiencing the Northern Expedition, a military campaign led by the Nationalist Party to unify the fragmented country under central control. Nature, too, left its mark this year. In Florida, a powerful hurricane struck Miami in September, flattening neighborhoods and leaving thousands homeless. It was a reminder of nature's force at a time when cities were still fragile before the elements. Yet, for all these shifts, daily life continued with calm persistence. Across continents, bells rang in schools, church doors opened on Sundays, and families gathered at tables, sharing bread and stories of the day. Daily, life around the world. to imagine 1926. Fully, let us slow down and walk through the everyday lives of its people. In small towns, mornings often began with the rattle of milk bottles on doorsteps, housewives buttoned aprons, while children pulled on wool stockings and laced boots before heading off to school. Many homes still lacked electricity, and kerosene lamps glowed in the evenings while those lucky enough to own radios tuned in to hear music or the latest news. In cities like New York, Paris, or Berlin, fashion spoke of the age. Women favored shorter dresses, hemlines that scandalized their grandmothers but delighted the younger generation who wanted to dance the Charleston with ease. Cloche hats framed bobbed haircuts, and pearls swung on long necklaces. Men, meanwhile, wore three-piece suits, flat caps, or fedoras, whether they were clerks, drivers, or students. Meals were hearty and home-centered. In the United States, a loaf of bread cost about 9 cents, and a dozen eggs around 55 cents. Families often gathered around simple dishes: roast meats, potatoes, soups, and pies. In Paris cafes, patrons sipped coffee with croissants, while in Tokyo, rice, fish, and miso soup filled breakfast bowls. The tastes of the world reflected both tradition and modern influence, as global trade slowly broadened palates. Children's play was simple but inventive. In city streets, boys tossed marbles or played stickball with makeshift bats. Girls skipped rope or played hopscotch, their laughter echoing between rows of brick houses. In rural areas, children helped with chores, but also found joy in climbing trees, chasing chickens, or sliding down grassy hills. Travel was shifting in this age. Horse-drawn carriages were still seen in villages, but automobiles were becoming increasingly common. In 1926, Henry Ford's Model T was still the world's most popular car, affordable to many families. Trains remained essential, their whistles cutting across farmland and city alike, and ocean liners carried travelers and immigrants across the seas. Air travel was no longer mere fantasy. Airlines were forming, though still a luxury for the adventurous few. Leisure time blossomed in the 1920s spirit. Families gathered around gramophones, winding them up to listen to records that crackled with jazz, blues, and dance tunes. People flocked to cinemas, marveling at silent films, their eyes widening at the magic of moving pictures. On warm evenings, couples strolled along promenades, while young people sought out nightclubs alive with syncopated rhythms. And yet beyond the bustling cities, much of the world remained quiet, rural, and timeless. Farmers sowed wheat under wide skies, shepherds tended their flocks, villages echoed with the ringing of church bells or the call to prayer, depending on where you wandered. Life in 1926 was both modern and ancient, both jazz and lullaby. Science, inventions, and technology. The mid-1920s were alive with invention, and 1926 was a year of curiosity turned into achievement. Perhaps most famously, American inventor Robert H. Goddard launched the world's first liquid-fueled rocket on March 16, 1926, in Auburn, Massachusetts. It flew only about 41 feet high and landed in a cabbage field, but it marked the quiet beginning of modern rocketry. Imagine the hiss of flames, the brief arc into the sky, and then silence, a seed planted for the space age to come. In medicine, insulin, discovered just a few years earlier, was now saving lives of those with diabetes, turning what had once been a fatal diagnosis into a manageable condition. Hospitals began to witness the transformation of patients who, once weak, could now live long and fuller lives. Radio technology expanded rapidly. Stations popped up around the globe, connecting listeners in ways never before possible. Families gathered around sets that glowed warmly, listening to jazz, comedy sketches, and presidential addresses. The sense of a shared world carried on in visible waves was quietly revolutionary. Automobiles improved with each passing year. Chrysler introduced its first car in 1926, joining the ranks of Ford, Chevrolet, and Dodge. Roads stretched farther, gasoline stations multiplied, and the freedom of travel became part of modern imagination. In the realm of flight, airlines in Germany and the United States began to establish scheduled passenger service. Airships like the Graf Zeppelin were celebrated marvels, floating gracefully through the skies. Though still rare, the dream of ordinary people flying no longer seemed so distant. And in homes, everyday conveniences spread slowly but surely. Electric refrigerators, while still expensive, were entering kitchens, replacing the icebox. Telephones became more common, though many households still relied on neighbors to share a party line. The world was humming with progress, not yet loud, but steady and full of wonder. Culture and the arts. Culture in 1926 carried both sparkle and depth. On bookshelves, Ernest Hemingway's The Sun Also Rises captured the voice of a new generation, while A. Milne gave children joy with Winnie-the-Pooh, introducing a gentle bear who would become beloved across the world. Satirical wit filled Sinclair Lewis's Man Trap, while detective fans enjoyed Agatha Christie's mysteries. In art, surrealism blossomed. Painters like Salvador Dali and Max Ernst explored dreamlike visions, while in Mexico, Diego Rivera painted murals full of life and labor. Paris remained a center of avant-garde creativity where artists, poets, and musicians mingled in smoky cafes. Music thrived in the Jazz Age. Louis Armstrong's trumpet sang, Duke Ellington filled ballrooms, and Bessie Smith's blues voice reached listeners' hearts. Dance halls shook with the Charleston, where flappers swung and tapped with infectious energy. Theatre thrived as well, with Noel Coward's witty plays captivating audiences in London. Silent film continued to reign with stars like Charlie Chaplin, Clara Bow, and Rudolph Valentino gracing screens. 1926 also saw the premiere of Don Juan, the first feature-length film with a synchronized musical score and sound effects, hinting at the coming revolution of talkies. Sports brought excitement too. In tennis, Suzanne Lenglen, the French star, continued to dazzle crowds. In baseball, Babe Ruth hit home runs that filled stadiums with cheers. Boxing legend Gene Tunney defeated Jack Dempsey in the famous long count fight, a moment debated long after. Through books, plays, films, and games, people in 1926 found laughter, reflection, and escape, the timeless gifts of culture. Media and headlines. News in 1926 arrived by newspaper, radio, and word of mouth. A penny or two bought the daily paper, its pages crowded with black and white type. Headlines carried both weight and whimsy. General strike grips Britain, millions idle. Coolidge says nation is sound. Route 66 opens to traffic. Goddard rocket flies in Massachusetts. Paris Fashion Week dazzles with shorter skirts. Babe Ruth hits 47th home run. The price of a movie ticket in the United States was about 25 cents. A new car could cost $300 to $1,000 depending on the make. Radios, now popular, cost around $75. And for lighter notes, comic strips like Popeye and Little Orphan Annie charmed readers, their panels bringing smiles over morning coffee. The sound of a newsboy calling, "Extra! Extra!" still echoed through city streets, while in rural areas, the mail brought magazines that kept families connected to a wider world. People born and passed. This year. Every year welcomes new voices while bidding farewell to others who shaped the world. In 1926, among those born were Marilyn Monroe, who would become an icon of film and beauty, Queen Elizabeth II, destined to reign for decades, and Hugh Hefner, future publisher. Also born were Tony Bennett, the singer with a velvet voice, and Fidel Castro, who would one day lead Cuba. At the same time, the world said goodbye to a few notable figures. Claude Monet, the French painter of water lilies and gardens, passed away, leaving behind canvases that still shimmer with light. Harry Houdini, the great magician and escape artist, also left the stage for the last time, his feats of daring forever remembered. Annie Oakley, the sharpshooter of the American frontier, died this year as well, her legend woven into the stories of the West. These passages remind us of the flow of time, the gentle exchange of generations. As 1926 drew to a close, the world felt like a place of contrasts. It was an age of jazz and speakeasies, of tradition lingering in villages, of rockets beginning to climb, and novels that redefined the human spirit. Shadows of politics and storms of nature reminded people of life's fragility, yet laughter, music, and invention carried hope forward. For those living in 1926, it may not have seemed extraordinary. It was simply their present. Children finishing school lessons, mothers preparing meals, fathers returning from fields or factories, young people sneaking into dances, old people sharing stories by the fire. Yet when we look back, we see a year alive with texture, color, and quiet transitions. The year closed with hopes of stability, even as the winds of the next decade stirred faintly in the distance. But for now, in that winter of 1926, families gathered around warm stoves, exchanged gifts, and raised glasses to the coming of 1927. And so, as we leave this year behind, let us imagine the soft glow of lamps in the night, the distant crackle of a gramophone, and the steady heartbeat of a world turning gently toward its next chapter. Thank you for joining me tonight, dear listener, as we wandered softly through the world of 1926. I hope this gentle journey has helped ease your mind, letting history's lullabies carry you toward rest. If you enjoyed this bedtime walk through the past, I invite you to like and subscribe, so you may join me again when we explore the next year, 1927. Each night, each year, each story unfolds like pages in a book, read slowly beneath the stars. Until then, may your dreams be peaceful, your sleep deep, and your heart light. Good night.